Now let me welcome my guests into the studio. And in the studio this morning, Abdul Malik Kwekubako, Editor-in-Chief of the New Crusading Guide newspaper, who got a special mention in the first address by the President-elect Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo last night. Kweku, good morning and welcome.
Good morning.
Also in the studio is Dr. Emmanuel Akwete. He's the Executive Director of the Institute of Democratic Governance, IDEC, one of the foremost governance institutions in this country. Doc, good morning and welcome to Newsfile. Mustafa Abdul Hamid is spokesperson for Nana Akufo-Addo. He would always correct us that he is the aide, not a or an aide to Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. A very excited gentleman this morning. Good morning and welcome to the show.
Good morning.
Great. Also is John Jinapor. John Jinapor is Deputy Power Minister and MP-elect Yape Kusogu. He's definitely happy that he gets the opportunity to get into Parliament, but of course not excited that his candidates did not win. John, good morning and welcome.
Thank you.
Right. This show, as always, is brought to you by Bank of Africa, strong as a group and close as a partner. MTN, welcome to the new world. Star Assurance, creating smiles since 1985. ACAP Compost Fertilizer, truly natural. White Temple Agency, a luxury you can afford. And Royal Item, walk in the light. Now, the show is going to be pregnant with a lot of sounds and voices that you would need to hear. You will hear from the president. You will hear from the president-elect. You will hear from civil society who have been saying one thing or the other. The UK embassy. You'll hear from a couple others. You'll hear, of course, more importantly, from Mrs. Charlotte Osei, the Electoral Commission chairperson, do the declaration. But before we do that, let me start by asking, starting with Kweku, what do you say briefly about the entire process of the elections? We know the special voting gave us some bit of trouble, and somehow people projected that the difficulty in the special voting will replicate or will again surface in the vote in the 7th December. It does appear it did not.
Yes, and listen to what the President said relative to the EC's performance. Listen to what the President-elect said relative to the same thing. Listen to all what the observers are saying. Then you would have to agree that overall, in spite of the hiccups and challenges, the EC has performed creditably. And for that matter, the elections were largely free and fair, transparent and credible. It represents the will of the good people of this country. So I give them a plus on that, all of us. To that extent, that's the way I see it. Yeah.
It represents the will of the people, and that's, you first heard that from John Dramani Mahama, the president-elect. What for you was the downside? Summary, Kweku.
Oh, there were few problems. I'm not, I don't know. My downside is would rather how some of the political actors were misbehaving, if I would say so. When the reality was so clear out there, some of them were out there asking their people to go out and do this and do that. Some were marching in white to go and insist on a certain thing that wasn't reality. I thought that was tricky because that could lead to all sorts of misrepresentations and misbehavior. That was for the long downside, you know. Of course, if you are talking of the early stages where some materials didn't get to some places in time, where I'm told an electoral officer came with all the materials minus the ink, and the policeman went to his car to bring an ink. You see, those things raised certain suspicions. Why was the policeman carrying an ink, an indelible ink on him? For what purpose? Where did he get it from? Those petty things. But thankfully, it wasn't a critical mass of negatives. I think that the positives outweighed the negatives.
Thank you. John, what do you say about the entire process, and what for you did you find didn't go well?
Well, I think that everybody who participated and observed the elections would give kudos to the Electoral Commission. So you cannot fail to do that. I mean, prior to that, there were so many speculations. I have observed a lot of elections. More often than not, indelible inks are fading out, ballot papers are getting short, forms are not arriving on time, issues here and there. But to be frank with you, this year's elections appear to be very, very smooth, very cordial, and in my estimation, it went very, very well, very peaceful. You never heard of any attempt to snatch ballot boxes unless it was reported and I did not take note of that. It appeared very, very peaceful. In my constituency, it was heated, especially when it was getting to the point of collation of the results. My polling stations agents kept calling me, let's just come in, let's just come in. But it went on so smoothly. And by 11 o'clock, I had all the results. And I think that we ought to commend the Electoral Commission and the chairperson, and also commend especially the observers and the security agencies. The downside, I must be frank with you, I was a bit disappointed when I heard Mr. McMahon around 1 o'clock virtually declaring the results. I thought that it could derail the process. And that brought about all the issues that Kwaku seems to be complaining. You realize that once he did that, there was a response and all that. And so, by and large, I think that's a credible election. It's a free, fair, and transparent election. As the president rightly said, the people of Ghana have expressed their will. Let's respect that will. Let's move on as a country. This country is bigger than any other election. But I noticed something, and I don't know if Hamid will correct me. When I listened to Nana Addo's speech yesterday, I thought that he would have taken the opportunity to call on his supporters to exercise some amount of restraint and be calm. I didn't.
You may want to listen to him again.
I didn't. That's why I said I didn't. Okay, then I commend that, because once you won, your supporters were going to be in a very jubilant mood. And when I left the president's office and I was going home, I ran into some of them. Of course, they banged on the car, but I took that as part of the jubilation. I mean, in that ecstatic mood, once they saw me, it was obvious that something could happen. But beyond the jubilation, would go down to work. And so I congratulate Nana Addo, and I must be honest with you, President Mahama has shown maturity. In the morning when the supporters marched up there, he came out, spoke to them, and asked all of them to go home. And even at that point, he made it emphatic and clear.
And these are supporters who were asked by leaders to march there?
I don't know if leaders...
Yes, they did. They did. They asked them to march there.
Well, and so as the final authority, he stamped his authority, thanked them, asked them to go home, and stated publicly that he would respect the results, whether positive or negative. The results came out. It wasn't the way he expected. I was there. He took a phone, called Nana Addo, congratulated him, wished him well, and after the results were declared, he accepted the results. I think that all of us should learn from that. I was reading my job online. Yaya Jammeh, after conceding, claimed that he's done some investigations with the Gambian elections, and he wouldn't accept the results. And so he's virtually dissolved the whole Electoral Commission, appointing a fresh Electoral Commission, and asking that they should reconduct the election.
That's the point.
And so, whilst other leaders and other sitting presidents are finding it difficult to accept the verdict.
What's the comparison?
To accept the verdict.
You compare Ghana to Yaya Jammeh's Gambia?
Comparing Yaya Jammeh to President Mahama, and saying that in other countries, some leaders who are sitting presidents...
Yaya Jammeh has been a dictator for all his life. The president won elections.
It doesn't matter. It tells us that this country is a blessed country. It tells you that we are making progress. That is why this country is...
That's supposed to be your preliminary. We'll get to details later. Yes, Mustafa, the EC has set itself to organize world-class elections. Did they achieve that in your estimation?
Absolutely. I think that it did. But before I come to the substance of your question, I want to respond to my brother on two matters about Nana Akufo-Addo and what he says.
Well, I think if you don't mind, you can shelve that for now. We have the statements here. We'll actually be playing them out. I told him that maybe he should listen again. And he admits that he didn't hear. Okay. So we'll get to there.
Right.
He went beyond asking them to exercise jubilating moderation.
I hear you. I hear you. Now, I think that it was a good election by all standards, compared to especially what we saw in 2012, where BVDs, biometric verification devices, failed, which compelled us to move the election into a second day, and all of that, and the chaos that engulfed many polling stations across Ghana and the rest of it. This one was relatively smooth, orderly, peaceful. The security people were all over the place, but they didn't attempt to either intimidate people or interfere, as the fear was at the beginning of the process. And of course, the counting, collation, and everything else was very smooth. By 11, we started to hear all the mighty trees that were falling, and etc., etc. So I think that this is an election that we need to commend the Electoral Commission for, and also to commend the political parties. I think that this year, because of the lessons of 2012, the parties themselves were determined to ensure that the elections really reflected the will of the people. And therefore, especially for my party, I can tell you the kind of infrastructure that we deployed across the country to be able to grab our pink sheets within record time and to be able to inform ourselves about what the outcome of the election was going to be and all of that. I mean, makes this election a very unique one, as far as we can compare it. I mean, as far as the comparison with previous elections is concerned. Talking about the downside, the only point, I mean, okay, there are 2 points, but the first point that sticks in my mind is the reports that some security personnel who were deployed to certain policies were already very drunk by the time that they got there. There's some police station in the central region, I think this was in Gomoa area, where a fire officer was drunk and sprawling on the ground and was not in his right mind to even stand on his feet. I think that was not correct. I mean, it's terrible. So, as I said, the security people showed a lot of professionalism, but for people like that, I think that we need to do a lot to rid our security services of elements that will bring its name into disrepute. The second point was what Abochi, the point Abochi raised, that Peter McMahon held.
When you say Abochi, you are referring to John Jinapo.
That's what he calls me.
Okay.
Okay, the point John Jinapo.
My name is Abochi's friend.
Yes,
Let's
yes.
say somebody thinks that's part of my name.
He's my very good friend.
Right.
So I call him Abochi and he calls me Abochi. We never call each other by our names. Okay. He says that Peter McMahon organized a press conference at 2:30 a.m. Sorry, not p.m. a.m. But it was Joyce Bawa Muktari who issued a statement at about 12:30 a.m. saying that their supporters should remain calm, that the president was in a comfortable lead. You know that. So that's the fact, that it is the NDC that took the lead in saying that they were in the lead. So we said, hey, this one, it is important that we let people also know the facts that we have, because by that time we had collected 91% of our pink sheets, and at that time we were at 54.5%.
Not 64.
No, it was 54 we put out, 54 at that time.
The 64
so,
he's referring to, I know where it's coming from.
Yeah.
That's the figure at the press conference held by the NDC, Kokwaido, who put out.
Yeah,
but Kokwaido who was misquoting Nana
McMahon,
because McMahon has said 54, but Kokwaido said 64.
We said 64. We never said that. Okay. So I mean, let's be honest. Politics is also a psychological game. You know, I mean, people say that politics is war without bloodshed. And therefore, in war, psychology is a critical element. So we thought that they had taken the lead in playing the psychological game and infusing it into the public space, that they were in the lead. And therefore, it was going to demoralize our supporters and destabilize our people. So we said, no. Then in that sense, we don't have a choice. We also have to put, in our case, to put it out with the facts. And then that's why we came out with the facts and said, these are the pink sheets that we have, and we are at 54.5%. That's all. So it was a response. And I think that responses in political, if you want warfare, is legitimate.
Okay. We will need to be very accurate about the timelines of these two events.
Yes.
I'm not exactly sure that of Joyce Bar Muktari preceded McMahon's announcement.
It did.
But
it did.
my producers will check and will get back to us
Yes.
so that we can clarify that.
Yes.
Because on the election headquarters, I was in the hot seat at the time. I was hosting Dr. Charles Rekubrobe, and I was hosting other guys from NDC, NPP, when all of these things were developing. What I remember is that we had the McMahon press conference, and then we had Joyce's statement issued.
That's not correct.
Doc.
Let your producers check.
Yes, let them help me. That's why I'm saying that my memory is not helping me. Yes. Doc, what do you say about the entire process? You were following very keenly because you also had a situation room by which you were monitoring, and even at a point in time, IDEC and your other partners came in to make certain statements and ask questions of the EC.
This was a good election, a standard setter that I think also delivered spectacular results, not only in terms of who won and who conceded to the victory of the opponent, but the general behavior of the parties. As far as I can recall, this is the first election that I can see Hamid and Abuchi sitting together, all saying this is a credible election and this is good. This is good for us. And it goes further to show.
The NDC has a caveat, though. The president speaks to that. We'll get to that in due course.
Yes, they allude to some irregularities.
That is so.
And so on. But I think overall, they also accept that it was a credible. You know that Jinapo would not use the word credible if it didn't overwhelm the irregularities or displace them.
Don't forget he's won
yes,
the election.
Yes. But I know him. If he hadn't won his parliamentary, he would.
Okay.
So I think that it's an election. These are elections that should make us all proud. We've crossed the line. If you look at how 2008 elections, what it did and what anxieties it caused, and you look at 2012, the speculation or expectation that 2016 was going to follow the trend wasn't fulfilled, but it turned out nicely that it rather went in a different direction, much desired and much commended, highly commended. I think it also tells us that, as Ghanaians, we are maturing. We have a matured electorate. That is what came out. And a matured electorate whose understanding of the need for peaceful elections, understanding for vigilance, credible elections. It was an election that got an electorate to draw on the reforms that have taken place for well over a decade, almost 1.5 decades, into account and to show how that has socialized them into doing elections differently when it was most needed. And I think that, yes, we cannot help but really see that, yes, we've turned the tide, we've turned another direction, and I hope that we can keep to this. The only challenge is that when it sets a standard, then you have to sustain it. And therefore, I think that for me, this is an election that brought us fully to maturity. Since 2012, and particularly the Supreme Court adjudication of the 2012 presidential, the international community has graded Ghana as a matured democracy. Jovially, we contest that and we argue and say, well, we still have challenges that we should. But this is the first time I would put a mature democracy on the table. And it means that the education that has taken place, especially the work that civil society has been doing consistently, oftentimes I think that we focus so much on the state institutions that we always think of civil society as a footnote. But consistently, the stand we take, the analysis, sounding where the dangers were, the responses that come, and so on, has roundly educated the electorate. And I think this is a matured electorate, making Ghana proud, making Africa proud. I also think that the leadership, the president, His Excellency the President, and the president-elect, just the rapport and the way they dealt with the results, all demonstrate that truly there's a great deal of maturity occurring at all levels. And I think this is what is the standard that we must bear. This is the standard that should take us towards 2020, because the expectations will be higher. And I think it will help us deal a little more effectively with the turbulence in our system. Finally, I think that the downside that you talk about, I think, has been spoken to, the equalization element. That didn't subside, but I understand the psychology of political warfare. But I think that we got so concerned, I think the CFI, that the results of the elections were being called by parties, political parties, and that was creating a situation, especially as the EC did not publish collated results in time. And we felt that many were calling our situation rooms and saying, look, can anything be done? Are they the ones to call the result? Is it not going to create a crisis? And we also felt that, look, until the EC begins, either explains or begins putting out the data, this situation was going to continue for some time. Importantly, also, somehow we had the media also playing that countervailing role, where they were also giving consistent data, which the media does always. And then that, I think, helped in balancing it somehow. But if the media hadn't done that and it was just the opposition party, now the party-elect, playing that role, I think that was really going to create a lot of problems for us. But eventually it ended well, and I think the lessons to be learned are the most important.
The security did well. They deserve some praise also.
I think the overall strategy was deterrence, okay? Because we were sounding out, and every Ghanaian media, the parties themselves, were sounding out the dangers. Look, for instance, the by-elections of 2015, Talensi, and the one in December, was it Amansi, or where you saw for the first time some heavy-duty weapons around police stations, and the police stepping in. The whole idea of a militarized party, militants, the police initiation of the IGP's dialogue and trying to see how to disarm them, the security issues, whether it's private security or state security, and so on. So by the time we got to the elections, I think the police had listened to the public and also had listened to the parties. And in that case, the way they came out, the 4 arrangements they announced, and I think their presence was subtle. I went to polling stations where I had very hilarious conversations with the police, but nobody wanted to misbehave. In fact, there was one case where a young man looked a bit drunk, and he just voted, I think, for the presidential, and was walking away, and he was called back to come and complete it. And then when he came in a very funny way, he said, no, don't worry, I know what I'm doing. I just wanted to vote for this. And then he turned back again. But eventually he did both. Okay. So I think there was that. But the comment about a policeman who was drunk, and which Hamid spoke about, I think it was nevertheless an election that caused a lot of stress and pressure, especially on security, on the political parties themselves. And one of the things that I think sometimes people react to pressure differently. And even politicians understand also do quite a bit of drinking when they're under pressure. So the intensity of the pressure on the police should not be underrated. My final point, maybe the downside, I think the small parties, their presence was rather weak. If you're looking at polling agents, they couldn't match the power, the presence, and the deployment of the two big parties. The two, we like to call them duopolistic parties because they are. And I think that spoke a bit to our democracy. If we really want to build strong multi-party politics, democracy, we ought to look into some of these matters too. They are an equal playing field given by,
Thank you very much. Okay, so let's do this quickly, and then we want to cut to the chase and get to when we eventually had the declaration and the things that followed after the declaration. John, from comfortable lead, and I've checked again, it was Joyce's statement that preceded the MPP's
because I wanted
announcement.
To make that point
thank you.
Now,
yes, because I read Joyce's statement.
From the statement,
right?
We do also acknowledge the decision of the Electoral Commission to extend voting in the Afram Place South constituency, and the reopening of the polls in Jamai North constituency tomorrow. So her statement was after 11:30. We hadn't gone to 12.
You're right. Thank you very much. What happened from comfortable lead to cruising to victory to slightly ahead and eventually, ultimately, conceding defeat? What were you up to? What were you about? Were you deceiving your followers?
Certainly not. Certainly not. First of all, you keep receiving results, and based on what you receive, you do projections. And if you permit me, I'll just use mine as a test case. In the 2012 elections, the NDC parliamentary candidate beat the MPP parliamentary candidate by about 600 votes. And so what I simply did was to do an Excel spreadsheet or whatever you choose to call it. So as the results keep coming, I personally punched them in and watched the results on the screen. I had also done some variance analysis to determine, for instance, polling station A, what did the Honorable Magistrate get? What did Zakaria get, even if we lost? And so once I got like 15 polling stations, I began to see the trend. Where we lost, I improved. And for instance, if we lost by 150 votes and I lose by 2 or 3 votes, it tells you that there's been an appreciation from my end. And so I could tell from the projections I was getting out of the about 140 or so polling stations that I was headed for victory. And at the end of the day, we moved the margin from about 600 to 10,000 in terms of the gap. So clearly, you don't need to receive all the results before you make projections. Secondly, you need to assure your supporters based on the information you have. And I think that is part of the communication, is part of the engagement, and more importantly, you needed to inform and communicate with your people. I really wish we had not gone that path, especially with the communication. We all sit here and commend ourselves, but let me be frank with you.
You really wish that President Mohammed's team had not issued the statement?
No, not just the statement, but some of the comments were very harsh. For example, you said that the president should concede defeat. He should
no, before we get there, I'm saying, you're saying in your situation, which you're using as an example, you were looking at the results as they came in, and there were times you were rising, there were times you may not have been rising. We were doing, keying in the polling station results as they were coming. And we were telling our audiences and doing the permutations with them from the start. The statement that was issued by Joyce Bauer, ask your listeners, ask your supporters to ignore all of what we were doing. Okay, that's to start with. And then went ahead to say that you were in a comfortable lead.
No, they should remain calm.
Okay. Now, if it is wrong for media organizations to be doing what they were doing, how will it be right for the party to pronounce a comfortable lead at that time?
I don't think anybody said
with very little results.
I don't think anybody said it's wrong. You are a media house. You choose to do what you think is professional. The party says that, look, we are in a comfortable lead, remain calm. Another party says we've won by this, let our supporters go and jubilate.
Please speak
and all
up a
that.
bit.
Let our supporters jubilate and all that. I'm saying that in all this we should be measured in the tone. It's good to communicate with your supporters. You cannot allow a vacuum. You can't just sit aloof and not communicate with them. But in doing so, you ought to be measured. You ought to be mindful that whatever you say have repercussions. That is all I'm saying. I
Okay,
think
so
that
let's deal with it this way.
it's important.
By the time the statement was issued and by the time the NPP had come out, the NPP had collated for 88% of the polling stations together.
No, most of
by-
us says 91.
No,
I thought I just heard
but the first, when they came first, they had not done 90.
it. He just said that.
Now, by the
That's what I
time
heard.
they had gone to the next day, they had gone beyond 90%. The next day, Johnson Essiedu Nketia holds a press conference in the evening, to say we are cruising to victory. At that time, the next day, Thursday, you still had very little results, which showed that you were cruising to victory. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that based on the information we had at that time and based on the projections we made, it was obvious that we were cruising the victory.
What do you know about what
And that's
percentage?
why
what
we
percentage
refrain.
of the votes had come in?
We strategically refrained from giving details in terms of the numbers and all that, and that was our decision. We thought that it wouldn't be prudent, given the security situation, to give out all those fine details. Be that as it may, we have the results now, and that is the most important thing. Bear in mind, in 2012, the General Secretary of the NPP even called his supporters to go and wear white. So, look, the most important thing is that we have the results. We might learn some lessons from some of the comments so that civil society, Dr. and Co. would help us, shape us, so that going forward, we would know how to conduct ourselves. And
You
so
see,
think
I
that that is
understand.
more
We
important.
will eventually, crescendo into that area where we'll all now be singing the unification song, if you like, because Ghana was the ultimate winner. But I think we need to deal with the issues. Now, when I say by the next day, Thursday, Johnson Essiedu Nketia holds a press conference and says you are cruising to victory. Earlier, before the daybreak, your party's campaign team issues a statement to say you are in a comfortable lead. And you say what information was put out depended on or was informed by what votes you had at the time. Now, yesterday afternoon, your representative at the Electoral Commission was still saying that you were ahead. At that time, we had made our projection at dawn by 2 p.m., 2 a.m., we had done it. Then at that time, almost all the media houses who were also trying to do the projections had also done. Are you saying that at that time, you still didn't have sufficient information to inform your followers that you were losing?
I have said that based on the information we had and based on the projections we had, we were in a comfortable lead. And that's a fact. You can't run away from that. But as more results kept coming and the final results crystallizes, it was obvious that where we expected to do very well, and don't forget, we make projections. For instance, you could assume that in Volta region, even if there's a 60% turnout, based on the trend analysis, we expect to have A and B. And nothing prevents you from doing those projections and making those conclusions. And so certainly, I'm sure we'll discuss the details about the turnouts and all that. And that will tell you that we were right to make those assumptions. We were right to put out that information. But I think that these are all processes that we'll all learn from. These are processes that...
Okay, just finally
we'll
on that
retire
point,
and-
obviously, if that same I won't get you to go to depart. At yesterday around the afternoon, Israel Lai was at the EC's collation center, the National Collation Center. As he spoke to your representative, Israel looked at his computer,
Whose computer?
your representative, and the results that had been collated. And he was very clear on the PC he saw Nanado leading with over 50. He spoke to Alhaji Alidu. Nanado was leading with over 54+%. Israel looked at that and put that to him. He tried to shut the PC down and told Israel, well, you are saying it. I can't confirm what you're saying.
Yeah.
But that was his own PC.
Yeah,
and
right.
that was his own collation.
Yes, that's true.
You don't think that you are misleading the public?
Let me give you a clear scenario. Assuming we had all the results from Ashanti region, and another was leading by even 60% on my PC, and I was waiting for results from Volta region, I would have every right to conclude that I'm winning that election. So
at that moment, that's the way we want to deal with it.
At that moment, and I mean at that moment, even if it meant 1 hour to declaration.
Okay.
It depended on what material he had in the PC, what available information he had on the PC. And so just seeing percentages should not lead you to drawing conclusions. And I think that is quite clear, because if I have all the polling stations, all the constituencies from Ashanti region, and Nanado leads by even 70%, and I'm waiting for a chunk from Volta region, I would begin to jubilate, because I'll be certain that something different will happen.
Thank you very much. Now, and I'll come to the question to Dr. Emmanuel Akwete on the potential of this back and forth by the parties, the potential of the implications, what could have happened, because IDEC had done some work, and you were on Newsfile, you spoke about it, and you got attacked. You didn't like it. We'll deal with it. Now,
do you like attacks?
This was to be expected, right? They said they were in a comfortable lead. They were cruising to victory, and then came to say they were slightly ahead, and then eventually conceded. There's nothing wrong with that.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that, and there is something wrong with that. It's of both. There's nothing wrong with that because I started my submission earlier on by saying that in warfare, psychology and mind games are a part of it. Now, however, when you play the mind game to the extent of, if you want, stubbornly refuting the obvious, that goes in the realm of, to quote Kweku Bakun, absurdity. Your cameras, the point that you made, for example, is a very succinct point. At the time that she issued the statement, she said in the statement that what the media houses are putting out are just polling station results, and that they were ahead in terms of constituency tallies, and therefore that people should ignore the polling station results. I am prepared to grant her that one and to say that that was okay. But after 24 hours, when all the media houses had the results, constituency results had been released, and the MPP was winning about 16 seats in Western Region, 19 in Central Region, 14 in Northern Region, 21 in Greater Accra Region, 20 in Brown Ahafo Region. It was obvious the MPP had won 6 regions and virtually divided Northern Region with the NDC. At that point, excuse my language, it was foolhardy to have been insisting that you were in the lead. In 2008 and 2012, I remember them, that's how they were taunting us. You have lost, go and sleep. We have won 7 regions. It is not possible. We have walloped you in the parliamentary elections.
And what was your position at that time?
Hold it.
What was your position?
Exactly. That's why I said, I was trying to go on Facebook for you to see what I wrote on my friend Rasmo Barak's wall, where he said, we have lost the parliamentary elections, but we are winning the presidential. I said, Ras, I was where you are now in 2008 and 2012. So I sympathize with you. I understand you.
In fact, on the election night,
Yes.
2012, I hosted him and his
my
brother. They were here.
Yeah,
Each was claiming victory.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's why I said yes and no. You remember, I honestly said at the beginning it's a yes and no. That mind games are acceptable. And therefore, it is okay to You know, I said to somebody yesterday, our supporters were agitated. They said, but why are they jubilating when we have won and everything? And I said, no. You know, there is something that we were taught in communication school called dissonance. You know, because they believed strongly that they were going to win. Now, another reality stares them in the face. That is going to create a dissonance in their person. And to be able to attain stability, they need a certain tranquilizer. And therefore, the self-delusion that, oh, it is possible for us to be a minority in parliament and be the ruling party. It's okay. It's okay for you to say that to yourself so you can stabilize and maintain your sanity. So I understand them to that extent. The point I am making is that in the collation room, when your cameras were there and staring at the screen, at the spreadsheet, and the MPP compiler, Mr. Tefa, says, this is my screen.
Right.
This is what we all have here in this
he was
room.
very sincere about
Yes. It says, at this point, we are 55% ahead. And he goes to the NDC screen, and the man shuts his screen and says, don't look at the screen, but we are winning. We are very comfortable. President
you had
Mahama
55, not 55% ahead.
At that time.
You had 55% of the votes, not 55% ahead.
No, we're 55% of the votes.
Leading
That's
by,
what I said.
okay, go ahead.
Abuchi, don't be mischievous. Abuchi, don't be mischievous. So the point I'm making is that at that point, frankly, it was foolhardy to have persisted in the psychological mind game. The psychological mind game can only be played to a certain extent. In the morning, it was okay all the way. But by midday, when even the cameras were zooming on EC spreadsheets, really, I mean, it was out of place to have been persisting in a psychological.
And you say that was very dangerous for the country?
Absolutely. You know, because it made MPP supporters also very agitated. And they said, hey, if that is the case, then Charlotte Osei wants to steal the election. It has even moved away from the NDC. I will show you messages on my phone where people said that the President Mahama was going to declare a state of emergency at 6 p.m., that there was going to be a curfew, and Charlotte was going to announce results that were contrary to what was there. So we should be on the guard and all of that. These messages were going. And so it was putting the country on tenterhooks. And that was exactly because of the foolhardiness that they were displaying.
No, I disagree with you.
Are you
but I
following?
hope I would have the opportunity.
So it was because of that. So at that point, it was needless for them to be persistent when it was obvious that they were losing. Because our people, I mean, of course, let's be honest. The MPP came, the Charlotte Osei's appointment was greeted with a lot of skepticism and suspicion by the MPP. Absolutely no doubt about it. She was out there to prove us wrong. And it was her duty to prove us wrong. And now the NDC...
Has she done that?
Now you're
Oh, she has.
Has she done that?
She has.
Has she proved you wrong?
Absolutely. Without a doubt. Without a doubt.
Because you won?
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. Not because we won. Because she proved us wrong. Yeah. You know, but you see, the NDC's psychological mind game was accentuating the belief that she was about to do something funny.
No.
Yeah, when she had no such intention. Yeah. Because everybody sees that you have lost the election. Yeah. And then you persist that, oh, we will win, we will be announced the winners. Yeah. And that's dangerous. Because it means that
you were in collusion with the woman. Why didn't you then choose to believe the Electoral Commission? Because the Electoral Commission had consistently said that they were practically unable to tamper with the results.
Yes.
Why were you still, because even when McMenu came forward to do that announcement, a declaration of sorts, he virtually was saying that they suspected that the results were going to be manipulated to their disadvantage.
Samioko said it flat.
And so that was sort of a preemptive strike.
Samioko said it.
Because, Abuchi, because you people were insisting that with about 103, 104 seats, you were still going to be declared presidential winners. And so we were saying, how are they going to be declared winners if they don't have a collusion agreement with the Electoral Commission woman? How? Otherwise, how were you on earth? Were you going to win this election when you had been walloped in 6 regions and massively in the parliamentary vote? It was not possible. It was not earthly possible. So for you to say that it is possible, then, hey, we had to watch out and say, then it means that what we have been saying about collusion is correct. So the results are going to be tempered. So our people better be on guard. I think that we were saying these things on legitimate grounds based on what the NDC
Asami
was telling
right
us.
when he made a categorical statement that
you were going to
we,
tamper with
no,
the
that's
results.
Okay.
we're tampering
as
with
much
the results.
as
Not we're going,
okay.
we're tampering with the
Sorry,
results.
guys. As much as you say
Categorical.
what the NDC was doing, and you realize that I took John through a process.
Yes, I realized.
And see, as journalists, sometimes we do certain things, we don't say emphatically that this is what it is. But I was trying to expose what he was saying, which was inconsistent.
Yes. So
that,
do what I
that they were
have said that-
dealing with the situation depending on the results they had as of that moment.
Yes.
But clearly, even on Friday, they were still saying they were leading, and that was wrong. Now, what about you hurrying
Yes.
to tell the whole world
Yes.
that you had won,
Yes.
not that you were winning, you had won,
Yes.
and that the president should concede?
Yes.
That,
Because-
one of your own,
Yes.
Dr. Charles Rekubrobe was on the election headquarters.
Yes.
And he didn't mince words. He said that was, irresponsible.
Well, I don't know about our own and what is not our own. What I know is about the fact. And the fact is that now it is established that Joyce Bawa Mukhtari's statement came even before midnight. That's established. And I've already established the point that in a warfare like that, you need also to counter, to also get your supporters to continue to be upbeat, so to speak. I've established that point. Now, the opponent's statement, the earlier one, just said that they were in a comfortable lead without the fact. For us to be able, to irrefutably prove that we were in the right, we needed to do it with figures. Are you following me? You were not also going to say, it's not true, we are also comfortably ahead. People were not going to be able to decipher the truth from the falsehood. But if we said, we have this number of pink sheets collated, this is the percentage where we stand, the rest of the pink sheets that are going to come will not make a mathematical difference. So we have won this election. We were speaking on facts, and facts don't lie.
And you proceeded to ask for a concession?
Yes, because we said that it was mathematically impossible for President Mahama to catch up with us. And exactly what
Mathematical impossibility is quoting the election headquarters.
or
You didn't say
statistically
that.
impossible.
You are quoting us.
Yes, but because we didn't say that explicitly. But when we said that he should concede, it was clear that we meant that where we have gotten to, it is impossible for him to catch up with us, and therefore we had won.
So the
And I'm
point
saying
is that
the
once
fact
you
that-
accuse them
yes,
of actions that had the potential of plunging the country into trouble,
yes,
you were also engaged in a similar act by going ahead, not saying like they did, that you are leading, but you went ahead to say we have won, concede. That also was
And,
dangerous.
and went further to accuse the EC of manipulating the results.
in a similar act that was based on facts. And facts don't trigger trouble. It is speculation. And if you want hot-headedness, that produces trouble. So the fact that we had fact was not going to
The DC was manipulating the
trouble.
results.
You are itching to say something.
Yeah.
Do it very quickly. I want Kweku to
Because-
speak, and then you speak last on this
The fact
issue.
was that the DC was manipulating the
How are you going to
results.
win if you were not going to manipulate? How are you going to win?
Okay, now Kweku, see what Hamid speaks about of the fear that brought about suspicions and the tension at the time was clearly also heightened by the Electoral Commission when yesterday it came with its first, media engagement and said, we have news for you, good and bad. There was a turnout of 40+%. And then the speculation became high and the tension went very much high. That for her to have said so, it meant. And shortly before that, you had NDC people saying that they are looking for a possible runoff. So people began to say that there was an intention to do some cancellations, and the NDC had already said that there were a lot of overvoting in the Ashanti region, and that a lot of votes there were going to be annulled. And if all of that happened, you are likely to have a runoff.
Yes, but excuse me, I just want to clarify something. In our electoral history, at least under the Fourth Republic, in terms of concession or accepting, I think we've done well with it. So the president conceding defeat, yes, it's in line with his character, but it is more in line with the fact that we've deepened the democratic culture of acceptability of election results. Check the history. 2000, Professor Mills conceded. 2004, in a very shaky way, he still conceded, even though a year later he came back saying that he had been cheated. Then 2008, it went 3 rounds, if you recall. At the end of the day, Akufo-Addo also conceded. And then 2012, after the Supreme Court petition, he conceded. So we have a history. We are not Gambia, where that boy is misbehaving, you know. So I've thought the comparison was a bit too wicked. I mean, not in our favor. Let's compare ourselves to better examples and not what is happening out there in Gambia.
I mean, he's not saying Trump, America or something.
Yes, Gambia. Look at that boy. He's misbehaving. You understand?
Totally.
And he has to, I've said somewhere that he has to be caught and castrated. I'm sorry. I withdraw that.
Does that affect, lead to good behavior?
I withdraw that.
What's the linkage?
I withdraw that.
Then you'll be castrating a lot of African
I withdraw that.
Okay, so
But let's come back to the issue. Look, there was a lot of politics. They were playing, especially the NPP, NDC. It was more of politics of the ostrich. You know, I kept on tracking them and monitoring them, and I couldn't believe where the confidence was coming from when the facts were so clear. I monitored your station a lot. All the stations did well, but I think Joy was extremely professional.
Thank you.
And I have to be honest with you.
Thank you.
Yes, I got glued to Joy News as if it was my diet, you know. So
It was an expensive enterprise.
yes, but that was part of the reason why the transparency, the credibility and integrity were maintained. Now, you talked about the EC coming with the 49% thing. Later on, I heard Atifa. He was trying to explain how come theirs was 49.
Right.
And I think he even understood where they were coming from. Overall, and that particular press conference, the EC also talked about outstanding constituencies and highlighted the fact that about 20-something were left in the north. You know, it created a certain problem. The MPP chaps then began to think there could be manipulation. Somebody tagged me on Facebook and was asking for our assistance to the effect that Madame Charlotte Osei had been spotted in the north. She arrived, landed there in a private jet. The lady was sitting right here in Accra. Everybody who was at the coalition center could see her. But it led to those things. But I think at the end of the day, there was also, I believe, undue pressure on the EC to declare the results. From all sides, even civil society groups expressed worry. And I thought that was a bit not consistent with the tradition we've had. The 24 hours, 48 hours, the tradition I've seen is within 72 hours. With all the elections. Yes, there was pressure too then. I have here NDC statements calling for Asfarijan to hurry up with 2008, in spite of the fact that 10 was hanging in the air. Okay, so I think that was a bit much of an unfair pressure.
Is it not the posture of particularly the NPP that it had won, leading to the press conferences held by the NDC and the NPP also, where people were now threatening to get on the street, and people were being dared to get on the street?
So what were we expecting the EC to announce?
I think
Piecemeal?
we were
Results
yes.
in piecemeal?
You know, we were used to the board, the big EC board, that also published results as they were coming, but not declaring the winner. But you saw something coming out. Okay?
Yes.
It wasn't ever the case that it was fully 72 hours before the EC came and said this region constituency.
No, but here we are talking of declaration of a winner.
So we were not talking about, I think civil society's position was, there was a vacuum. EC had not published any, and all you heard was MPP data, which...
The AC explained that.
Yeah, they did.
The German election.
Yes, Not only that, no. Earlier on, the EC explained that it had received some complaints about overvoting,
I'm coming there.
and because of that, it had asked for retabulation of all.
Going to vet all.
You know, and so it created the gap that also.
But more importantly, that the parties were refusing to sign
on 90. You know,
okay.
For me,
continue.
The EC press conference that didn't work, didn't come out well, was the one held by the PR man, the communications.
Eric Japasu.
That, for me, was a disaster. That's where the issue of overvoting was first articulated. No further details really were given. It was left hanging. And when that was thrown out, I heard the NDC chaps. Some of them, I refused to mention them because I don't want to dignify them. Do you understand? Some of their leaders, I'm not going to mention the name, but everybody knows who I'm talking about. That person engages in a lot of political buffoonery all over the place. You know, he started talking about 200 overvoting in 200 polling stations in Ashanti region. He won't give you the facts. He won't give you figures. All he has done is 200, and that didn't help. That's on basis of which some people then began to speculate that perhaps there could be a collusion between the EC and the political party, a particular political party, in this case the ruling party. But I think it ended up being unfounded. So yes, you can say the EC, perhaps there was a certain lack of finesse in a certain where, in terms of articulating. But subsequently, when the chairperson herself began to address the issues, I think clarity also began to come forward. And to that extent, we've had a very good election, you know, but it's good. Where we have raised in this country, I believe the propaganda, the lessons, I'm telling you, the lessons of this thing is that propaganda does not win elections. Character assassination does not win elections.
You may be proven wrong.
See, the NDC sound bites, the way they went about it, consistently.
In favor of, let's say, the ruling party or something. That would have led to a situation. And that is why, for instance, the police, not only the IGP, but Chief of Defense Staff, read his statements from May, June, and the recent one. You know, they were quite scary. But it was in anticipation of something that would happen because citizens would not accept results. But which results wouldn't they have accepted? Could it be NDC losing or MPP losing? Fortunately, all this raised a certain level of awareness, alertness, vigilance, and engagement. I'm sure that the missions that came to Ghana, who had read all this, also were talking to institutions and authorities. And the end result is that we got a good thing. And I think EC definitely needs to be commended. So is the National Peace Council. The media did phenomenally well. I monitored the media. I think the quality of your engagement, the timeliness of it, you started very early in the process, the education on manifestos, the comparison of results with the past, and it was quite phenomenal. It was great. And I think this has qualified you to join civil society as leaders.
Thank you very much, Dr. Emmanuel Akwete. Now, we will want to move on because there are some of the issues that will show up in the next, segments that we want to deal with. But we are taking a break. Before we do that, I was referring you to the Israelites interaction at the EC National Coalition Center with the NDC's representative. Just take a listen. Watch this.
I want us to go over to the representative for the NDC here. He's Alhaji Haruna.
Yes.
All right, so good. Afternoon to you, Alhaji Haruna.
Good afternoon.
All right, so we're looking at a number of issues that have come up. First of all, do you have any issues at all with the voter turnout that's been talked about? The EC chairperson talked about 49%. Well, that has gone up to 56.7% at the moment. Are you looking at that?
Yeah, that's one.
Or what figures do you have?
Well,
You've been doing your own collation.
We've been doing our own collation, and as the pink sheets come up, the numbers change consistently as we we input this stuff. But the thing about it is that yes, there's been a market reduction from 2012 in terms of the voter turnout. When you look at Volta region and some other regions, it's much lower than what we expected. But I mean, we're still going through and then doing our checks. And
essentially, you don't have a percentage yet?
No, I don't have a percentage yet right now.
How about the figures that you're getting, the results that you're getting in that you're required to sign? Are you noticing any discrepancies?
Well, there are some discrepancies that have to do with our agents, first of all, not signing it, and they have noted that there have been cases of overvoting, especially in the Ashanti region and also in the Eastern region.
Are these widespread?
What do you mean by widespread?
Are they, so you're talking about instances of overvoting, are there many such instances?
Yeah. We've noted about 200 of them.
200?
Yeah, about 20 in the Eastern region.
Okay, so 200 having to do with polling stations, so 200 polling stations, I see.
Yeah, something like that. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Mm-hmm. All right, and so what have you raised these issues? You've obviously talked about the issue about overvoting already, but you're indicating that there are some other issues. Which are these other issues?
Well, some of the other issues has to do with on the sheets do not have the stamps of the regional director, which tells me that it's a certified result. Like the one that I'm holding here does not have the the stamp of the regional director of the EC, and then you also have situations where
with this issue where it's not been stamped.
Yeah.
Have you raised it with the electoral?
Not this particular one yet. Not this particular one. But what we're doing is that we're putting it together, and then we don't want to do it piecemeal. We want to put it all together and then take it to them and then show them that these are the issues that we have. You also have instances where the numbers do not match the figures that are written here. Okay, and then again, like I said, there are also instances.
Are there many such instances?
Not too many, but there are instances nonetheless, because any anomaly or any irregularity that is outside of the CI-94, we have to flag it and let them know about it, and that is what we've been doing.
Okay. But are you approving or validating the results that you're getting so far? Because the EC says it is urging the political parties to facilitate the validation.
Well, what we're doing, we are facilitating the validation by going through and thoroughly checking to make sure that it is consistent with the CI-94 regulations. Okay, and that's what we're doing.
And I guess consistent with the figures that you have collated yourself.
Yes, and we are doing some analysis just to make sure, to give us the comfort level that what we have are the right numbers, and also it's consistent. It's something that has actually been sent to us by our agents unadulterated.
All right.
And that's what we're doing.
Now, how many of the results do you have you had so far?
So far, we have about constituencies 212.
212. And what picture? Okay, so I'm looking at the what you have on your screen right now. 212 out of 275.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I'm looking at the absolute figures that you're having.
Well, I don't think it's a good idea right now for us to even. I'm giving you 212 because that is something that it's all over the place. But the issue is this: due to the overvoting issues that we've identified in some regions, and especially Ashanti and Eastern region, we may have the numbers here collated, but then we need to have them resolved before then we can say that we have certified numbers. So it would be incorrect to even report these numbers.
All right, so for those of you who don't have the benefit of the television, and so you may not have seen what happened, this was the NDC's representative, and when Israel got there, was asking him the questions. Israel eventually now asked how many constituencies had come in. He said 200 plus. Then Israel asked, what does the results show at this point? And as he attempted to answer, Israel looked at what he had on his laptop and began to read the percentage, which showed clearly that Nana Akufo-Addo was in the lead. And at that point, when Israel tried to mention the percentage, he then held his laptop and tried to shut it. I mean, it did sound, and to many people, that this is so insincere, and that's what you were hiding, and you were rather doing things that was dangerous for the country.
I don't think so. First of all, what Israel saw, what is the proof that truly reflected the 212? So I think that if you see something on the screen, it doesn't necessarily tell you that.
We take a break here. We take a break here. When we return, we will bring to you the EC's declaration, the concession speeches, the Nana Akufo-Addo's, if you like, victory speech, and the matters that